Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good early evening, depending on where you are in the world. But Mountain Time, it is 9 a.m. It is Saturday, Mountain Time, 9 a.m. And that means it is time for the Saturday morning conversation about science of mind. And my name is Tracy Brown. I'm so happy to be hanging out with you today. And I'm always happy to dive into more about the science of mind. And I love it that we go through the textbook, the Science of Mind textbook written by Ernest Holmes. And we spend a little more than half of the year going through it chapter by chapter. And then the rest of the year, we explore how do we apply the science of mind principles in life and what are some of the other things that Ernest Holmes wrote. So today the focus is on chapter 10, and that chapter is titled Faith. And what I was getting ready to say is it's one of my favorite chapters in the book. However, I was hesitating because it kind of feels like I say that a lot. Like whatever chapter we're focusing on, oh, that's one of my favorite chapters in the book. But today, faith is one, it truly is one of my favorite chapters for lots of reasons. I think we talk a lot about change your thinking, change your life, right? And we talk a lot about beliefs, how our beliefs drive our behavior. And none of that works if I don't have faith that there is a power for good in the universe available to all and I can use it, to quote or to paraphrase a very famous and common Holmes quote. And so it's the whole idea of faith. What is it and how does it work? That is a big part of our conversation. So I am so happy to be here and to be here with Wayne and Diego and a few others of you who have not put a comment in the chat yet. So let's dive in. I always like to begin each of these conversations when we're starting a new chapter with going over what Ernest Holmes did in organizing the chapter. And in organizing the chapter, at the top of every chapter, Ernest Holmes does something I love. He lists all of the subtitles that are in the chapter. And so in chapter 10, Faith, he starts off with the mental approach and leads into always a power, then misplaced faith, understanding faith, no confusion, available to all, vitalizing faith, the technique of acquiring faith, and conviction. Now, keep in mind, this chapter is like 7 pages. It is not like it's a, 15 or 20 page chapter. Those are a lot of subsections. And that also may be one of the reasons why I like this chapter so much. Because sometimes Ernest Holmes can be very long winded and can take a really long time to say a lot, but it could have been said in a third of that space. And in this chapter, he really breaks it down and gives you what you need to know and then builds upon it. So there's a lot of building. And let's start where he started, the mental approach. On page 155, the universe is a spiritual system. Its laws are those of intelligence. We approach it through the mind, which enables us to know, to will, and to act. Prayer, faith, and belief are closely related mental attitudes. Repeating, prayer, faith, and belief are closely related mental attitudes. Prayer is a mental approach to reality. It's not the symbol, but the idea symbolized that makes prayer effective. Some prayers are more effective than others. Some only help us to endure, while others transcend conditions and demonstrate an invisible law which has power over the invisible. Insofar as our prayer is affirmative, it's creative of the desired results. So, this first section in the chapter on faith basically reminds us that faith is a mental attitude, and it can sometimes get confused with prayer and with belief. So let's hold there, go to the glossary. And in the glossary, how does Ernest Holmes define faith? If I had been thinking, I would have looked earlier and bookmarked the page, but I didn't. Luckily, it's a glossary and it's alphabetized. So here's what Ernest Holmes has when he defines faith. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, in quotes, quoting, right, quoting the Bible. And then he goes on to say, faith is a mental attitude so inwardly embodied that the mind can no longer deny it. Faith is complete when it is both a conscious and subjective acceptance. Faith may be consciously generated. In spiritual terminology, faith means a belief in the presence of an invisible principle and law, which directly and specifically responds to us. Quoting the Bible, thy faith has made thee whole. Now, that's a lot of words. And often what I've heard people do is say, oh, well, here's how Ernest Holmes defines faith. Faith is a mental attitude. That is written here, but it is not enough. Remember, he already said faith and belief and prayer are all mental attitudes, and they're closely related, but they're different. So what makes faith different is the rest of that sentence in the glossary. Faith is a mental attitude so inwardly embodied that the mind can no longer deny it. Faith is a mental attitude so inwardly embodied that the mind can no longer deny it. So inwardly embodied that the mind can no longer deny it. So inwardly embodied. Internally, inwardly, I embody that belief or that attitude. So there is nothing in my subconscious or conscious mind that can pretend it doesn't know that that is true. That's what faith is. That's what faith is. it is a mindset of believing, but I believe it so much. I inwardly embody it. I live it. I breathe it. I act in accordance with it. And there's nothing in my brain that allows me to deny that capital T truth. That's what faith is. And so in chapter 10, Ernest Holmes starts with reminding us it's a mental attitude and then goes on to describe that it is always a power. Last paragraph on page 155. Faith has been recognized as a power throughout the ages, whether it be faith in God, faith in one's fellow men, in faith in oneself, or faith in what one is doing. The idea that faith has only to do with our religious experience is a mistake. Faith is a faculty of the mind that finds its highest expression in the religious attitude, but always, the person who has faith in their own ability accomplishes far more than the one who has no confidence in themselves. Those who have great faith have great power. Think about that in your own life. What have you had faith in? When have you had faith in yourself? And how did it affect the way you showed up and what you do and how you decide what is important? Faith is not just a mental attitude or a way to think. It is a way to prioritize what is happening. Your faith determines what you choose and how you behave. So, the next section in this chapter, the heading is on page 156, blew my mind the very first time I read it. And the section is titled Misplaced Faith. Someone has said the entire world is suffering from one big fear, the fear that God will not answer our prayers. Interesting. The fear of lack is nothing more than the belief that God does not or will not supply us with whatever we need. The fear of death is the belief that the promises of eternal life may not be true. The fear of loss of health, loss of friends, loss of property, all arise from the belief that God is not all that we claim. And we claim that God is omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresent. And so Diego captures it so beautifully here that what is faith that we're talking about? All faith is a strong, and I'm going to use and instead of or, a strong and unshakable belief in something. And so, absolutely, as this section goes on to say, but what is fear? Nothing more nor less than the negative use of faith. Nothing more or less than the negative use of faith. And so the way that I talk about this a lot in classes, especially when we're, of course, talking about faith or fear. So think of this continuum. right? It's the exact same energy. And what we generally call faith, we might put on one end of the continuum, right? And then we put fear on the other end of the continuum as if they are opposites. But in reality, the entire continuum is faith. The entire continuum is faith. The ends of the continuum are I have faith in good, or I have faith in bad, or I have faith in hope, I have faith in harm. I have faith in getting what I want, or I have faith that I won't get what I want. But it's all one continuum. So the question is, where am I placing my faith, or what am I placing my faith in? What am I applying my faith to? Am I applying my faith to the good that is seeking to express in my life? Or am I applying the faith to a quote unquote false belief that nothing ever works out for me? So Ernest Holmes describes this as misplaced faith, that we are putting our faith in something not happening. And because you've already gone through previous chapters in the textbook, in the Science of Mind textbook, then you know that the universe simply is saying yes to what we believe or what we choose. So if I misplace my faith and place it focused on things never work out, or that's not possible for me, then the universe has to support that which we are grounding ourselves in, because that's what we actually have faith in. That's what we are saying we believe. That's what we are embodying internally. Remember, the definition is not just faith is a mental attitude. It is a mental attitude that reflects what we so strongly internally embody that our brain, our mind cannot deny it. Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Because I don't know about you, but I know for me, I catch myself being in fear about things that, on the other hand, I say I have faith in the goodness of spirit. I have faith that everything is good or leading to good. I have faith that the universe supplies all my needs. I have faith that there's a power for good in the universe and I can use it. So if I truly have faith, I am not able to then stay in a place where, during the pandemic, when all of my business evaporated, like, oh, why was I afraid that I wouldn't have money to pay my bills and live my life, right? So the human part of us does have fear. It's not that our faith will eliminate fear, but what we can train ourselves to do is we can train ourselves to notice when we are misplacing our faith in the fear, when we are letting the fear become what we believe in. So I want to be really clear. I'm not saying that we will never be afraid again if we have pure and total faith, because remember, fear and faith are not opposites. They are the exact same energy. It's just Am I turning my attention this way or this way? So I need to be able to notice when I am turning my attention this way and building faith in an outcome that I do not want to have, so that I can take a deep breath and say, Tracy, what do you need to do to build and then internally embody faith in what I do want to have happen? I'm hoping this makes sense to you, right? And Ernest Holmes, again, I think this is this one section on misplaced faith, that I'm misplacing my faith when I begin to build, construct an entire life around what I fear, because I'm beginning to internally embody what I fear instead of what I want or what I know is possible. So that one little short section, it's not even a full page, but on page 156, you can constantly go back to that and be reminded that if I am operating from fear, if I am allowing fear to guide my life, I am putting faith in whatever it is I'm afraid of. And I'm in effect giving that whatever I'm afraid of, I'm giving it more and more and more and more power. Because whatever I have faith in, I am giving it more and more and more power to influence and to guide my life. So I could spend another 20 minutes on misplaced faith alone. It has changed my life so much to understand that faith and fear are the same energy. But I'm going to move on because there's a lot of other juicy stuff in this chapter. So, the very next section, Ernest Holmes talks about understanding faith. And so he builds on this idea that faith, there's only one faith, and where are you placing it? And so it starts off with this: we wish a faith based on the knowledge that there is nothing to fear. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, which is a quote from the Bible. And then the thought of faith molds the undifferentiated substance and brings into manifestation the thing which was fashioned in the mind. This is how faith brings our desires to pass. Repeating, the thought of faith molds the undifferentiated substance and brings into manifestation the thing which was fashioned in the mind. This is how faith brings our desires to pass. And so, Wayne, I love that, fortune favors the bold. And it is the bold and what you think. It is the bold. Have bold faith, right? Have bold faith. Be bold in what you choose to put your attention on, because that is actually what the universe is responding to. It is moving undifferentiated substance, forming what you have faith in from undifferentiated substance, from the invisible, from the potentiality, and it is then differentiating it into the form, shape, time, substance that you needed to be based on what you have faith in. When we use our creative imagination and strong faith, Ernest Holmes writes, it will create for us out of the one substance whatever we have formed in thought. In this way, humanity becomes a co-creator with God. So Understanding faith, right, is that what you believe in such a way that is so strong, right, that I internally embody it, that your brain can no longer deny it. Your brain will not be thinking other things. Your brain will not lead you on detours because you have so strongly embodied it internally in your mind, in your heart, in your emotions, in your mental thinking, conscious mental thinking, that your subconscious has no choice but to go, oh, all right, well, we're going that way, are we? Oh, all right, let's go. So Ernest Holmes continues to build on this with a section called No Confusion. And it starts off like this. History has recorded many instances of healing through faith. This is an undisputed fact. Yet we cannot believe in a divine power that responds more quickly to one than to another. We are compelled to see that prayer is not an end of itself. It is a means to an end. Like the practice of science of mind, it is a way, not the way. The principle governing faith is that when the one praying becomes convinced that the prayer will automatically be answered, Jesus announced the law of mind, saying, "It is done to you, unto you as you believe." Have you ever heard that before? Yes. Many, many times in many different ways, right? It is done to you as you believe. The universe exists by its own self pronouncement, by its own affirmation. The universe only knows I am, it knows nothing else. Therefore, wherever prayer in faith touches capital R reality, praise aright, praise according to whatever the capital T truth is, then prayer must be answered. So that's really the whole section, no confusion, right? That when you have no confusion and your faith is purely on the good that is happening in alignment with spiritual law, happens. Boom. Drop the mic. There's no delay. And I will add here, he doesn't add it here, he refers to it later, but what we sometimes think is delay or, denial of whatever it is that we have been praying for is not always that, because in the physical form, it may take some, what we know as time, to bring the right people together or to line up the things that need to be lined up to deliver or demonstrate that prayer. But this instantaneous expression of a change in condition is possible. It is possible, especially when it relates to our own or our individual way of being in the world. And it's always reflecting our deepest belief, our deepest belief. So it is the actual expression of the affirmation of the most powerful. So, yes, Diego, your most powerful force, your thoughts. Hence, your attention is how you aim this power, right? We pay attention to what we believe and what we know, and are they in alignment with what we are doing and saying? And the only way to be sure about that is to pay attention to where are my thoughts at this moment. And then 5 minutes later, where are my thoughts at this moment, and this moment, and this moment, and this moment? I mentioned a few minutes ago just the reference to the pandemic and how I'm sure I'm not the only person whose faith was challenged in the first few months of the pandemic in 2020, as we were all adjusting to the unknown and that was rapidly unfolding. And there were some days where I was looking back, I'm so grateful that I understand and use the principles of science of mind. And this whole piece around faith was so critical for me because, as Diego just said, stop and ask, where are my thoughts at this moment? Well, I did. I had to stop dozens of times during the day and stop and go, wait, what am I thinking? Or my thinking was so powerful, it would surprise me how much I was in fear because my physical being, my physical life felt threatened. So when someone gets a medical diagnosis that they didn't expect, right? Or when someone is facing a divorce that they didn't anticipate, or there is a natural disaster, right? Disease, divorce, disaster. I live in a neighborhood where 2.5 years ago, a tornado went through, and there was so much damage to people's homes and to businesses. One of the strip shopping centers that is about, I don't know, maybe 2 miles from me, a 5 minute drive, 5 or 6 minute drive, had to be completely rebuilt because it was just wiped out. When we are in situations that are devastating or we feel despair, it's easy. It's so easy. So during the early stage of the pandemic, the first 3 months, there were so many days where I had to stop and ask myself, Tracy, do you believe what you teach? You teach this stuff, do you believe it? Right? It's either good or leading to good. Oh, okay. It doesn't feel like it's good right now. But having all my clients cancel and me not knowing where I'm going to have any money coming in for the next 3 months and beyond, because we don't know at that point. We don't know how long this is going to go on. How is it that good? Well, I don't feel like it's good, but it must be leading to good. I have faith in the fact that everything that is happening is not happening to me, it is happening for me. I have faith that there is there is a source of supply in the universe that will never leave me unsupplied. So I would be reminding myself of all these things that I believe because my brain wanted to believe that, oh, you're not going to have any money come in for 3 months, maybe 6 months. It could go on a year. For a year, your savings will not last that long. Then what will you do? And if you won't have a place to live. And what would you do if you were homeless? And then if you got sick? And I heard it was all the if this happens, this is the disaster that must unfold. I had to constantly remind my brain what I really have faith in and not begin to turn my faith to all the data that my brain was throwing at me, or reading or listening to the news, right? That was streaming about all the hundreds and then thousands and then millions of people who were dying. It would be easy to misplace my faith in this pattern that, just like these 500,000 people, I too I have no control. I'm going to get this disease and I am going to die as well. Whew. I am a little tired and deflated just thinking about it. And it was potentially overwhelming in the moment, which is why understanding these principles and applying faith properly is so important. It's easy to have faith in the good when everything in your life is going well, when the people around you are behaving in ways that you like and are doing things that you want them to do. It is easy to live guided by faith in the good when you have all of the basics covered in your life and you even have a little excess. It's not as easy to remember when things are not going as well as you would like. And that is when you use an affirmation like Wayne just put in the chat. The primal substance of life loves me. Me. It loves everyone. It loves you too. But what I have to remember is that primal substance loves me, loves me, is providing for me, will not ever desert me, will never stop paying attention. Never, never. So let's see what else Ernest Holmes had to say as we begin to wind down. We've got a few more pages. The next section is critical because he reminds us that this truth and this love is available to all. And so he shares and reminds us of some stories in the Bible. But I'm just going to read this one sentence. Since faith is a quality unconfined to age or station, it may be ours today as much as has been any person's at any time. Repeating, since faith is a quality that is not confined to any age or station in life, faith may be ours today as much as it has been active in anyone else at any time of creation. And we have to remember, faith is not a reward, right? It is a quality that all of us have. We have, every one of us, every moment of our human experience, we have a 100% portion of faith. No, you don't have less faith or more faith. You always have a 100% portion of faith. The question is, what portion of that are you focusing on what you want and what you know to be spiritual truth? And what portion of it are you focusing it on fear or lack or what you don't want? I'm just letting you take that in and maybe reflect in your own life. You have 100% faith at all times. Am I spending 90% of my faith on the good and 10% on fear? Or am I spending 90% on fear and lack and all the disasters that could maybe possibly happen or are happening now, and only 10% on what I want, what's possible, what is the way that spirit could show up for good? Because spirit is going to show up for the full 100% of whatever you have faith in. You are the only one who can manage whether you are putting your faith, placing your faith in good and God, or placing your faith in the not good. And good, right, is our human judgment. Whatever we judge, whatever we choose, let me say it that way. Whatever it is that we choose, the universe is saying yes to that. So after Ernest Holmes reminds us that this faith is available to all and we can use it, he gives us a little bit on vitalizing faith, how we can grow it or focus it more finely on the good. So in our human brain, we do think of, ye of little faith, meaning, if you're only using a little bit of the faith toward good. So Ernest Holmes writes on the top of page 159, in order to have faith, we must have a conviction that all is well. Repeating, in order to have faith, we must have a conviction that all is well. In order to keep faith, we must allow nothing to enter our thought which will weaken this conviction. Faith is built up from belief, acceptance, and trust. Whenever anything enters our thought which destroys, in any degree, one of these attitudes, to that extent, faith is weakened. So again, it's just that reminder of what Diego brought up just a few minutes ago, that it's up to us to really stop and notice what we're thinking. Where are we putting our belief? Where are we putting our trust? And to monitor our thoughts and our feelings in order to determine which direction we want to go. In this vitalizing faith section, he also writes, all sciences are actually built upon faith principles because all principles are invisible and all laws are accepted based on faith. We shall often, at the very bottom of the page, if you are following along in the textbook, last sentence, we shall often need to know that the truth which we announce is superior to the condition we want to change. So that's my example of during the pandemic. I would be announcing the condition, I would be announcing my faith in the good, which was definitely way better than the condition I was actually experiencing in the human moment. So I didn't deny the challenge. I didn't deny the fear. I would acknowledge, wow, I'm really scared right now. I really have never been through something like this before. And what I know is that it does not have the power to direct the rest of my life. It does not have the power to define who I am. I am a woman of faith, and my faith is in, and I would list what my faith was in, that good must come of this, that clients will hire me, that there will be work for me to do to support myself and to contribute into the world good things, right? That what I would be putting my faith in has more power than whatever the condition is that I want to change. So, if any of this has interested you or inspired you or simply reminded you of what you already know about science of mind principles and putting them into action in your life, then you might want to check out the last part of this chapter. He has a section on the technique that you can use to acquire or to build, to expand your faith. And that section begins with this sentence: one cannot be a good student of the science of mind who is filled with fear and confusion. Period. And so faith is what faith in the good, faith in God, faith in universal spiritual principles is what we learn to do to replace fear and confusion. And so he has a page and a half on that, and then reminds us of conviction. And so I'm going to end our time today with what Ernest Holmes has to say about conviction and faith. On page 162, paragraph 3. Because we fail to realize that principle is not bound by precedent, we limit our faith to that which has already been accomplished, and few miracles result. When faith finds its proper place in divine law, there are no limitations, and what are called miraculous results follow. Many of you may have heard some of us use that phrase in prayer, in treatment, in talks. Principle is not bound by precedent. And when I have conviction that it doesn't matter what's happened before, principle is not bound by precedent. My faith is that what looks like a miracle can occur because principle is not bound by precedent. It is not limited by whatever has happened before. I am not limited by whatever has happened before. This is the actual truth of life in general and my life specifically. When I can be convicted, right? I am so convinced of that. I truly believe it. I internally embody it. Then that faith, driven by that kind of conviction, is what causes change to happen. Ernest Holmes writes in the last paragraph in this chapter, if we are to have an active faith, the faith of God, instead of merely a faith in God, our thought must be centered in universal mind. That is what faith is all about. I so love the comments that you have shared today in the chat. You all have been chatting with each other, and I've only been able to share a few of those comments, but they're really fabulous. And our time is just about up. So I want to remind you that every Saturday at 9 a.m. Mountain Time, 4 p.m. in the UK, we have this conversation. And we just dive a little bit deeper into the science of mind and what it means. Between now and the next time, I can't encourage you enough to please check out other programming on the New Thought Media Network. There are spiritual practices Monday through Thursday, early in the morning, Mountain Time, And throughout the week, there are programs about just about everything else spiritually related. So check some of them out. Find some of the programs that support you with where you are, and then join us again next Saturday for a conversation about science of mind.